Peace. That's what brought me to this condo. After 3 years of sleeping to the sound of honking horns and sirens downtown, I finally found silence. My name is Michael Thompson. I'm 38. And exactly 47 days ago, I moved into this house in the suburbs. The divorce left me with few material things but gave me a fresh start. The back deck won me over when the realtor showed me the property, especially the hot tub installed under the stars. This is a luxury I deserve, I thought, signing the papers without a second thought. Now, every late afternoon, after hours of programming at the tech office, I dive into that warm, bubbling water and feel every muscle in my body relax. It's my sacred ritual. My routine is simple and predictable. I wake up at 6, work until 5, and have the whole night to myself. No noisy parties from the neighbors, no forced social gatherings. Just me, my books, and my hot tub under the starry sky. Or so I thought until last week's condo meeting. "You must be the newbie at House 27. A female voice interrupted my thoughts while I was pouring coffee in the corner of the community room. I turned and saw a woman of about 45, with perfectly styled brown hair and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this." "Michael Thompson," I extended my hand. "I moved here just over a month ago." "Deborah Wilson, House 23, she said as her hand gripped mine a bit too hard. "We're practically neighbors. I can see your yard from my porch." The way she said that bugged me, like my yard was an extension of hers. "That tub on your deck looks amazing," she continued, her eyes fixed on me. "Got a lot of use out of it?" "Whenever I can," I replied, trying to sound casual. "I love hot tubs. They're so intimate." She stepped closer. "We should share moments like these between neighbors, don't you think?" Before I could answer, the building manager called everyone to start the meeting. Throughout the meeting, I could feel Deborah's eyes on me, like she was sizing up a new acquisition. 3 days later, I noticed something odd. The water level in the tub was lower than usual, even though I hadn't used it that day. I figured there might be a leak and went on with my day. The next morning, I found wet footprints on the deck, too small to be mine. A week went by, with small clues. The hot tub cover was slightly out of alignment, a wine glass left near the edge, the scent of a perfume that wasn't mine. I started checking the security cameras I had installed when I moved in, but the recordings didn't show anything conclusive, just distant shadows among the trees that separated my house from the street. Until one Tuesday, when I got home from work early, I found Deborah completely at ease in my hot tub. "What are you doing on my property?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from trembling with anger. She looked at me with absolutely no embarrassment, lounging comfortably among the bubbles. "Good afternoon to you too, Michael." "How did you get in? This is trespassing." "The side fence has a small opening," she replied calmly. "And about trespassing. Don't be so dramatic. We're neighbors. We share spaces." "We don't share anything," I said, pointing at the gate. "Get out of my house now or I'll call the cops." She slowly got up, revealing a black bikini that contrasted with her pale skin. "That's pretty hostile of you. I thought we could be friends." "Please, just leave," I insisted. She passed by me, so close that I could feel the warmth of her wet body. "You're going to regret treating me like that," she whispered before disappearing into the side garden. In the following days, I started finding strange objects in the yard. A pair of sunglasses on the deck table, an expensive half-empty bottle of wine, flowers ripped from my own garden rearranged in a vase that wasn't mine. I installed more cameras, now covering every possible angle. Neighbors began giving me strange looks at the local market. One even approached me. "Is it true you've been inviting Deborah over for private hot tub parties?" I realized she was spreading rumors. When I finally managed to get clear recordings of her nighttime invasions, I went to the police station. The officer who took me in looked bored. "So, your neighbor likes your jacuzzi?" he asked, barely glancing at the footage on my phone. "Have you tried talking to her?" "I'm showing proof of trespassing," I snapped, irritated. "Look, Mr. Thompson, this just seems like a neighborly misunderstanding. Try community mediation before bringing in the authorities over something so trivial." I left the station feeling alone in this fight. That very night, I found a note on my door. "The water was a little cold today. Next time, leave it running for me." For the first time since it all started, I felt like I had something concrete. A week after my frustrated visit to the station, I installed high-definition cameras with motion sensors and night vision. Every penny was worth it when, on the third night, I captured not only Deborah, but also a tall, burly man trying to force his way in through the side gate. The footage was crystal clear. Deborah using a hair clip on the lock while the stranger kept watch. Their concentrated expressions, their furtive glances at every sound, the silent communication between them, all recorded in 1080p. This time, the police couldn't ignore it. I showed the video to a different officer, an older sergeant named Mendez, who listened to my account with growing attention. "Have you seen this guy with her before?" he asked, pointing to the screen. "Never. It looks like she brought backup." The sergeant took detailed notes. "I'm sending a patrol car right now. This has crossed over from just a neighborly misunderstanding." I went home with mixed feelings of relief and dread. 2 hours later, I was watching from the window as a patrol car parked in front of Deborah's house. The officers spent nearly half an hour inside before emerging with her in handcuffs, along with the man who had helped her with the break-in. My phone rang. It was Sergeant Mendez. "Mr. Thompson, we've arrested Deborah Wilson and Jason Roberts for attempted home invasion. Roberts has a record for burglary. We're holding both for questioning." For 3 days, I breathed a little easier. On the morning of the 4th day, though, I spotted Deborah in her own yard, trimming roses as if nothing had happened. "How is she free?" I asked the sergeant on the phone. "She posted bail," he replied, sounding just as disappointed as I felt. "The judge considered it her first offense, and since they never actually broke into your property." "But you saw the earlier recordings? She trespassed into my house multiple times." "Technically, those recordings only show her outside the house, using the hot tub. There were no clear signs of break-in in the earlier incidents." He sighed. "We got a restraining order. She can't come within 100 meters of you or your property." The restraining order felt like nothing more than a useless piece of paper. That same afternoon, I saw Deborah chatting animatedly with 3 other neighbors at the end of the street. When she saw me, she smiled and waved as if we were old friends. "You know he accused me of breaking into his house?" Her voice was raised deliberately. "Poor thing. So lonely after the divorce that he starts imagining things." The others looked at me with a mix of pity and distrust. I realized she was building a narrative where I was the crazy one, the unstable, the troublesome new guy in our peaceful condo. An elderly neighbor approached me the next day when I was watering my garden. "Dear, are you all right? Deborah told us about your episodes. If you need to talk, I have the contact of a great psychologist." The whole condo was turning against me. The only people who believed my side were Sergeant Mendez and a neighbor from House 31, a retiree who mentioned he had noticed Deborah's strange behavior in the past. "She did something similar with the previous owners of your house," he revealed, as we shared a coffee on his porch. "The couple ended up moving out. I never knew exactly why, but there were rumors." That night, coming back from the supermarket, I immediately noticed something was off. The back door was ajar, even though I was sure I'd locked it. My heart pounded. I thought about calling the police right then, but something pushed me to go inside. The inside of the house was oddly neat, more organized than I'd left it. Someone had been there, not to mess things up, but to change small details. The books on the shelf were rearranged. The framed photos had been turned face down. In the bedroom, the bed was perfectly made, just the way I would never do it. On the pillow, a single, long brown hair. The wardrobe was open, and my clothes, which I usually piled without much care, were meticulously folded. It was in the bathroom that I found the message. On the foggy mirror, written with a finger, "I'm taking care of you, Michael. Always." I rushed to check the camera recordings. All of them had been disabled during the time I was out. Whoever had been in my home knew exactly how to shut the system off. I called the police, but I already knew what they'd find. No sign of a break-in, no concrete evidence beyond my own testimony about how things had been changed. The officer who came this time wasn't Sergeant Mendez. He took my report down with obvious skepticism. "Let me get this straight. Someone broke into your house just to make your bed and fold your clothes?" he asked with a half-smile. I didn't sleep that night, nor the next. When I finally gave in to exhaustion on the 3rd day, I had nightmares about someone watching me sleep. I installed new locks, bought a more sophisticated alarm system, even put cameras inside the house. Sergeant Mendez, on his day off, came by to check on my situation. "It's not paranoia if it's really happening," he said, helping me reinforce the windows. "We're keeping an eye on Deborah, but we need to catch her in the act." A week went by without any incidents. I began to think that maybe the police surveillance was working. I risked a night in the hot tub, the first in almost a month. The sky was clear, the stars shining. For a few hours, I allowed myself to forget. The next day, I found female hair caught in the tub's drain. On the deck table, a half-empty wine glass with a lipstick mark on the rim. That's when the calls started. First, just silence on the other end. Then, audible breathing. Finally, incomprehensible whispers. I blocked dozens of numbers, but the calls always came from different phones. I started missing work. My performance slipped. My boss called me in to talk about personal issues affecting my productivity. How was I supposed to explain that I was being psychologically tortured by an obsessive neighbor? A month after Deborah's temporary arrest, I woke up to the sound of glass breaking. 3:40 in the morning. Someone was shattering the living room window. I grabbed the baseball bat I'd started keeping by my bed and called emergency services with a trembling hand. Active intrusion. 27 Cypress Lane, I whispered, as I heard movement on the lower floor. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure the intruders could hear it. I slowly positioned myself at the top of the stairs. Two figures were moving around in the living room. A smaller silhouette I immediately recognized as Deborah, and the bulkier figure that could only be Jason Roberts. He must be asleep. Deborah's voice was almost sing-song. Let's surprise him. The glint of metal in Jason's hand was unmistakable. A gun. I backed into the bedroom, quietly locking the door. I had my own surprise. A legally registered pistol I had bought after the first break-in. Michael, dear. Deborah's voice came from the corridor. We know you're awake. Don't be rude to your guests. The bedroom doorknob turned slowly. Then, with more force. Jason, he locked the door. Frustration obvious in his tone. Open it. Deborah, I called out loud enough to be heard through the door. The police are on their way. Now leave. A sharp laugh was her reply. Always the police, always the rules. Don't you understand that I'm above all this? A violent knock on the door. Jason was trying to break it down with his shoulder. I'm armed, I warned. If that door opens, I'll shoot in self-defense. For a moment, silence. Then frantic whispering between them. You wouldn't do that. Deborah's voice less confident now. You don't have the guts. Another, harder knock on the door. The wood started giving way. Last warning. My voice was surprisingly firm. The next impact broke part of the lock. The door was still hanging by a thread. That's when I heard the sirens in the distance. Shit. He really called the cops. Jason's voice sounded for the first time, hoarse and nervous. It doesn't matter, Deborah replied. When we're done here, we'll say he threatened us, that he's mentally unstable. One last knock, and the door partially gave in. Through the opening, I saw Deborah's face, her eyes wide with a sickly excitement. Surprise, Michael, she grinned, pushing the damaged door open. I pointed the gun directly into the gap. Don't come any closer. It was the first time I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Her unwavering confidence finally met a real barrier. The certainty in my eyes that I wasn't bluffing. The sirens were much closer now. Red and blue lights illuminated the corridor through the windows. Come on, damn it! Jason grabbed Deborah's arm. We have to get out of here! No! She shouted, resisting. He's mine! This house is mine! The sound of police bursting in through the front door. Shouted orders. Heavy footsteps coming up the stairs. Police! Stop! Jason dropped Deborah and raised his hands. The gun he was carrying hit the floor with a metallic thud. Deborah, however, lunged toward me one last time, ignoring the officers. This isn't over, she hissed before 3 officers subdued her. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this. This time, there was no bail. The evidence was irrefutable. Nighttime invasion, illegal weapon possession, violation of the restraining order. The cameras inside my house captured everything. The subsequent investigation revealed that Deborah had a history of obsessive behavior in 2 other cities, using different names. Jason Roberts confessed that she paid him to help with the break-ins. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Sitting in the courtroom, I listened to testimonies from other victims that came forward, including the previous owners of my house, who confirmed that they had moved out because of Deborah's constant harassment. 5 years of solitary confinement, with no chance of parole, the judge announced in the final sentence. As the officers led her away, Deborah glanced at me one last time. The look she gave me no longer held that manipulative confidence, only helpless anger and perhaps a belated understanding of her actions. The following months were dedicated to recovery, physically, replacing doors, locks, and windows, and psychologically, learning once again how to relax in my own home. I hired a therapist who helped me process the trauma and rebuild my sense of security. Gradually, I returned to my work routine. My performance improved, and I even received a promotion that had been delayed during the turbulent period. The neighbors, who had once been manipulated by Deborah, began coming to me with sincere apologies. She fooled us all, admitted the elderly neighbor who had once offered me psychological help. We were wrong to doubt you. I formed genuine friendships with some of them, especially with the retiree from House 31, who became a confidant and weekend chess partner on Sunday afternoons. It took me 3 months to use the hot tub again. The first time, I got out after only 5 minutes, feeling restless and anxious. The second time, I lasted 10 minutes. Gradually, I reclaimed that space that once represented my personal sanctuary. On a particularly starry night, nearly a year after Deborah's arrest, I sank into the warm water and looked up at the sky. For the first time, I wasn't obsessively checking the surroundings or imagining eyes watching me from the shadows. I closed my eyes and felt the tension leave my body. The house was finally mine again. The silence meant peace, not apprehension. The shadows were just shadows. Last week, I received an invitation from the neighbors for a community barbecue. I would have turned it down immediately before. This time, I accepted. I brought an apple pie and came back with 3 new contacts on my phone and plans for a Sunday running group. Yesterday, I received a letter from Deborah's lawyer. She wanted to apologize in person. I tore up the request before reading it all. Some bridges shouldn't be rebuilt. Some people don't deserve a second chance in our lives. My psychologist says it's a sign of progress, setting healthy boundaries and consciously choosing who we let into our space. This morning, while having coffee on the porch, I watched Deborah's house finally being sold after months on the market. A young couple with a small child was happily carrying boxes. For a moment, I considered going over to warn them about the history of that house, about the woman who once lived there. But then I saw the genuine joy on their faces, the hope for a fresh start, the same hope I had when I moved here. I realized they didn't need to start their journey with my ghosts. Instead, I walked over to them with a bottle of wine and introduced myself as their new neighbor. When they asked about the neighborhood, I talked about the tranquility, the stars visible at night, and the friendly neighbors. Tonight, I'm going to use my hot tub, and for the first time in a long while, I won't think about Deborah Wilson. I'll just enjoy the warmth of the water, the silence of the night, and the feeling of finally being home. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this.